Pre-season Guernseys have always been an interesting concept. In recent seasons, we've seen teams like Port Adelaide, St Kilda and Richmond all wearing pre-season specific Guernseys. But Richmond are really the only team that has consistently worn one over the last 10 years or so. But I'm starting to think that all 18 teams should wear a unique Guernsey design, specifically for their pre-season games. Now, the case against this concept is pretty obvious. Pre-season Guernseys could be considered somewhat pointless, and you wouldn't want to waste a great Guernsey design on a couple of pre-season games that hardly anyone will see. But I reckon there's a really interesting case for pre-season Guernseys, and why they could actually have some significant meaning behind them. Firstly, you should save the iconic traditional jumpers for the real stuff. These games are just practice after all, and they always look a little out of place at these small stately grounds. But really the more significant argument here is that players should earn the right to wear these iconic jumpers. Whenever a new player debuts, they're presented with their jumper in the rooms before the game. It's a great tradition in the AFL, but usually these players have already worn the Guernsey in a pre-season game or two. Imagine if every team had a pre-season Guernsey, and the only time they wore their traditional Guernseys was in an actual in-season or finals game. When a young player makes their debut and is presented with their jumper, it will give that jumper true meaning, as it represents all the work they've put in and how they've earned the right to wear the iconic Guernsey for the first time on game day. So here's some examples of what teams could wear as pre-season Guernseys. We'll start off with Collingwood, and using this idea of earning the right to wear the iconic jumper. In this case, you got to earn the right to wear the stripes. So we save the black and white for the real games, and this nice alternate jumper both looks good and can represent that idea. I know we keep pushing this idea of a lighter blue jumper for Carlton, but it makes even more sense as a pre-season kit. If the navy blue is so sacred, then save it for the games that matter, and a lighter blue can represent the idea of being halfway there to the real stuff. I really liked the Queensland Spirit Guernsey the Lions wore back in 2011, so in that same maroon and gold style, I've come up with this outline Guernsey similar to the Giants' Never Surrender jumper. I think outline Guernseys work great for this pre-season idea, as it sort of represents a young player being just about there to earning their playing jumper in round one. In similar style, Essendon have a cool outline design for their 2024 training kits. I'm usually very much against teams just wearing training jumpers in pre-season games, especially with those big logos slapped on the front of the jumper, but if you rework this design, you could come up with something pretty cool for the Bombers to wear in pre-season. While we're talking about training kits, I love Freo's training Guernseys for this season, and actually wouldn't be against these being worn in pre-season games. The placement of the sponsor logos makes it look good as a game day Guernsey, but the overall design probably isn't good enough to be worn in season, so pre-season games seem like a good place for it. Last season, North wore a new blue clash jumper against Geelong, and while it served its purpose on that day, it definitely looked like they just wore their training kits rather than design a new jumper for this matchup. It's not a bad design though, and would work perfectly as a pre-season Guernsey. So should more teams wear pre-season Guernseys? Let me know in the comments below.